Okay, so imagine the whole family around the dinner table enjoying a great meal together,
Yes.
having wonderful laughs and conversation. It sounds great, right?
Sounds great.
Yeah, well, that's much easier said than done because it takes a lot of planning and work to have a family dinner. Inevitably,
Yeah.
one or more people aren't going to like the food, so there's complaining about the food that was made. Siblings start fighting about who knows what, and the whole thing sounds like more of a hassle than it's worth, right? But today we're making the case for why family dinners are important, what they look like at our house, and some practical tips along the way.
Let's get into that.
Hi, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you've joined us for Family Friday on the Marriage by Design podcast. And this is a time where we get to talk to you about God's design for family, how we see that in the Bible, and how we do that in our own home.
That's right. So what are we talking about today, babe?
So we're talking about family dinner today.
Family dinner.
The time where you get to get around the table and eat a meal together.
So we've talked a lot on our Family Friday episodes in the past about the importance that we take as a family with family dinners.
Right. Yeah, and so we just wanted to dive into that a little bit deeper. So we're not doing anything real biblical today
Practical.
on our episode, but it's just more practical. So we're going to talk to you about why even do family dinners? Like, why should we make the effort to do them?
Yeah.
And then also talk to you about some real practical ways to make it happen.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So let's talk about some statistics. I found some super interesting statistics about family mealtime. And so we'll just run through those. So a recent study by the Food Marketing Institute Foundation by the Hartman Group.
Whoa, you can make a foundation for anything.
Yes, right. Shows that only 50% of family dinners are being eaten together as a family. And I thought that was even actually higher than I probably would have thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
But
I
what
would have
they
probably
said-
guessed it would have been lower.
This is from 2017, I believe.
Okay.
And they said, 50% of family dinners are being eaten together as a family. Now, that just means together. That doesn't necessarily mean, like, around the table, TV's off, you're having a conversation. That's just saying, like, you're eating them together.
Right. I mean, if you can't trust the Food Marketing Institute Foundation, what can you trust?
Gosh. Okay, and then in the last 20 years, the frequency of family dinners has declined by 33%. And that's a pretty steep decline. Americans now, this was shocking to me. Americans now spend more of their food budget on eating out than they do on groceries.
Do you think that surprises you?
I think
Yeah,
it
I don't
surprised
think
me
so.
because I'm such a tightwad, and I can't imagine that.
I mean, that might be, but doing the whole, like, getting takeout and all that is huge right now.
Sure, or just running through somewhere real quick and grabbing something on the way to another thing.
Right.
Yeah.
When people do, there's so much stuff in our schedules now with select sports and school activities and church activities and friends that live across town and all the stuff that goes on. Yeah, I mean that's doesn't surprise me that a lot of people are just picking stuff up more often than they're going out. And that's not even necessarily like that 50% of their food is eating out. It's just the cost. And man, don't I know it, that the cost, I mean, shoot, for the cost of us to take our family of 6 out to eat.
That's partially why it never happens.
Right, but it's probably
very expensive.
What? It's probably 2 or 3 days worth of food.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, just the raw, ingredients that you're making when you make something at home.
Right. Yeah, it's
crazy.
Very expensive.
Yeah, it is.
To eat out. And I feel like every time we eat out, most times we eat out, we're like, could have had something better at home.
Right.
So, okay. So then the next thing is talking about the benefits of dining together and some statistics on that. So, dining together has big benefits, and these are some of them. So, according to the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University, another big one, kids and teenagers that have family dinners 3 or more times a week are less likely to be overweight. They are more likely to eat healthy food. Also, just a little side note, if you grow your own garden in the nicer months, your kids are also much more likely to eat healthy food, which I found really interesting.
What about your husband?
Nathan, you need to work on that.
I know.
This guy does not like vegetables. It's ridiculous.
No.
Vegetables are so great, and he does not like them.
I'm not a rabbit. I'm not trying to be a rabbit.
Oh my gosh. Nothing's going to help Nathan, I don't think. Although they did have a lot of family dinners, so you would be an outlier.
That's true. I didn't eat vegetables back then.
Okay, they perform better academically. They're less likely to engage in risky behaviors like drugs, alcohol, and sexual activity. They have better relationships with their parents. And they have fewer emotional and behavioral problems. They have greater emotional well-being, and then have just a higher satisfaction of life.
I'd love to know this particular study, if they asked a question in there about how long have you been doing this? Because I do think, we've run into some couples like this that neglected to do this, and now their kids are 13, 15, and 17, and they're trying to all of a sudden go, hey, we're sitting down 5 nights a week for a family dinner, and it's like, I'm not sure it's actually helping them have better relationship with their kids. You know what I mean? Like, it can be awkward.
I didn't put this in there, but I believe the number is 62% of teens wish they had more family dinners.
Was that right?
Mm-hmm. It was a very high number.
That's great.
Very interesting.
That's great.
So
but easier when you start younger.
It's definitely easier when you get that culture set up when they're younger, and just that expectation of this is something that we do. So in our family, we set out if you've watched these episodes, we talked about our end of year planning.
Yeah.
And what we do is we set out our goals for the next year and things that are important to us and all that. And one thing that's really important to me and to Nathan as well, this is just something that I bring up year after year, is having at a minimum 4 nights a week that we eat together around the table. Now that
on average.
Yeah, and that averages out. You know, baseball season, that's harder to do. Although we'll talk here in a little bit about how we try to do that a lot of times. But that could be with other people. That could be us having people over, friends over, but we're still all sitting around the dinner table, or us being over at friends' houses or family houses or whatever.
Point is, we're all around the table, the same table counts at the same time.
Right. So we could be, killing 2 birds with one stone.
We can't talk about killing on YouTube, by the way.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So,
we could be hitting 2 birds with one stone. Is that okay? All right.
Wow, you're really riding the rail here.
All right. So, how do we manage to do family dinners when life is busy, or when my kids are picky and they don't ever want to eat anything that I make, or it's just so hard because I work and then I come home and there's just such a small amount of time to get dinner on the table, or I'm at home with my kids all day and I don't have time to do the meal prepping thing, So how do we get dinner on the table? How do we manage to have family dinners when everything seems to be against us?
Yeah, so I want to cut in as you are going to jump into this. You may be listening to this and thinking that Andrea is doing a lot of the talking this episode. And to that, I would say, yeah.
Well, you do a lot of the talking on a lot of other episodes.
No, I don't mean that. I'm sure people are happy to hear you talk. But what I want to say is a lot of the reason for that is because in our home, and another, your home might run a little bit differently than this, but in our home, Andrea does a phenomenal job of making all of these things happen.
Thanks.
And as we talk through a lot of these things, I mean, there's a lot of these things that honestly I don't even really think about because and maybe that sounds poor. And I don't mean it to. It's not that I'm not interested in them. It's just you do such a flawless job of running this part of our family rocks that I don't really have to think about this. And that's it for me as your husband. That's a huge blessing, and I'm so grateful that you take the time you do to do that, because a lot of this stuff that we're going to talk about, I think about it and like my head hurts because it's just not. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around a lot of these things. The cooking planning part, right? I mean, so the stuff we're going to talk about how we have conversation around the table, that part. is a little bit different. That's more of a joint effort. But a lot of this, like, how do we get dinners from... Like, there's just something magical that happens where it goes from the refrigerator onto my plate, into my stomach at the right time.
Yeah, and it is so much work to go from, to plan your menu and to get all the food and have it all planned out and then get it onto the table. It is a ton of work. A ton of work. And if you're not somebody who does that in your household, Nathan is very grateful, and I'm grateful that he's thankful for that. But if you're not somebody that does that in your household, go tell the person who does thank you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of planning.
It is.
A lot of execution. It's a lot of work.
It is. So, thanks for being great. I'm grateful that you're grateful that I'm grateful.
Stop it. All right.
Do you have anything to say?
Yes. Ditto. Plus an extra grateful. Okay. So how do we do this? A few things that we can talk about. One is plan your meals and your groceries. If you're just trying to fly by the seat of your pants every day, it's probably not going to work well. And if it works well for you, great. But I know no one that works well for. So what works well for? Planning, not planning your meals and your groceries. So you're just going to decide the day, at the moment. I don't know, we're just going to make something come together. Maybe I have to go to the grocery store.
Yeah, I would say, so we've had times of that. And the thing we've found, if you're struggling with an inflating grocery budget each month, I would point to this first. Mm-hmm. Like, are you planning ahead for your meals? Because I can tell you from our experience, the times when our grocery budget shot up are because it is directly correlated to the number of grocery trips we take each week.
Yeah.
Like, the more grocery store trips we take each week, the higher our grocery bill is. And you might go, well, duh. But I mean, like, even small, like, as opposed to one large grocery versus 6 small grocery, the 6 small grocery trips are going to result in a larger grocery bill.
Yep.
Because you're not planning, and then you go to the store hungry, and it's not good.
Yeah, and when you're able to plan your week, you can say, I'm going to buy a 5-pound bag of potatoes, and I'm going to use them in 3 different meals.
Right.
And then, but if you're not planning your week, you're going to buy a 5-pound bag of potatoes at some point and use 3 of them for one meal, and then you have,
potatoes
4
rotting.
Pounds of potatoes left over.
And then they look like a brain, and they got those white things growing out of them.
Right.
Crucial.
So planning planning definitely saves you a lot of money, but it saves you a lot of time and sanity and all that sort of thing, just to be able to plan that out and then go by your plan.
Yeah.
So take the time to plan. Do the prep work. If you have any time at all, do some prep work. Chop some onions, some vegetables. Even prepping your fruit for the week can save tons of time. My kids eat a decent amount of fruit because we don't really do dessert in our house. And fruit is kind of their dessert. So even just cutting the strawberries, peeling the oranges, all that stuff saves a lot of time not having to do it each meal.
And if you don't do that, one thing I learned growing up with Oregon Trail was that you will die of dysentery if you don't eat lots of fruits and vegetables.
Oh, really? That was one of the reasons you died of dysentery on the Oregon Trail?
Well, I didn't. But people, because I ate fruits and vegetables. But there were people in my party that died.
Yes, we are very worried around here about dying of dysentery.
This is serious. Oregon Trail.
Okay.
Brother.
Great. Thanks for that.
Thanks for protecting us from dysentery.
Okay, you're welcome.
I'm grateful that you do.
Stop it. All right, so the next thing, as we move right along, is get the family involved in the cooking, the planning, and the grocery shopping. So as your kids get... when they're younger, it's more of an annoyance to have them involved in the cooking. But if they're not involved when they're younger, they're not going to be probably involved when they're older.
Yeah, that's right.
So as annoying as it might be, get them involved young. And then as they're older, they just learn to do the cooking and they can help a ton. And it's good for their skill sets to learn how to cook a meal. So my parents did this genius thing where they got us involved in cooking when we were younger, and then when we got to be, I don't know, maybe 12, they taught us how to plan a meal. Go through the cookbooks, plan a meal with several different, I wouldn't say courses, but a main dish and some sides, Plan that out, then write out the groceries that you need, and then at the time, but there was no grocery pickup at the time because we do grocery pickup now. Our family
It was before we knew about the Rona.
Well, I was doing grocery pickup way before the Rona. But anyway, then we would go with my mom to do the grocery shopping, and then we had a night that week, whenever, I don't remember if we did it once a month or twice a month. Anyway, we had a night where we were in charge of doing it, and my mom was there to help if we needed, but it was really our show, and we were having to time the dishes to try to make it so that they all came together at the right time, and
it's terrifying,
and plate them and all that sort of thing. And it was such a great learning experience for us to learn how to cook, how to time it, how to scale for a family. It was so great. So then when we were launched out into the world, we knew how to do that.
Right.
It was fantastic. So that's what we're raising our kids up to do as well.
Yeah, and you can tie this into the last one of prep work too. Like, even if your kids are, maybe they're busy enough that having them cook a full meal isn't practical, but maybe there's one afternoon a week where you can get your kids around the island in the kitchen and get everybody chopping onions or cutting up lettuce or doing whatever.
Yeah, even young. I mean, my 3-year-old can help chop strawberries. So there's little kids' knives they're plastic knives, but they cut things. And they can't probably cut an onion, but they can cut tomatoes, they can cut fruit. So
Siblings.
Siblings, yeah. So I help them. They've, on many occasions, especially when I'm under the gun for entertaining for some purposes, they will help me make a fruit salad, and they'll cut all the fruit for the fruit salad.
That's great.
So even little kids can get involved
in it. I'm sure they enjoy it. You feel like you're the big time.
It's great. Awesome. Yeah, so get the family involved in cooking, in planning, in the grocery shopping, all that sort of thing. And they'll, as they get older, of course, lighten your load. As they're younger, that's a little bit harder, but they do help, and it's awesome. Yeah,
so this next one is probably like our biggest Warnock secret for how we meet our 4-time-a-week goal. So
eat at unconventional times or places when your schedule is full. So I have the privilege of staying at home with my kids, and so if we, because of crazy schedules, need to eat at 4:45 or 5 o'clock, I'm here to make the meal to be ready at that time, right? So that might be harder if you're working outside the home.
Sure.
But even still, there's ways to make it happen, use a crock pot or have a meal that you've made previously that's frozen that you're going to have going, whatever that looks like.
Or occasionally when it's going to be 4:45, get takeout. Sure. But still eat it together as a family.
Sure. Yeah, so we are in the baseball season, and we only have one child doing an activity right now in the evenings. So I know that there's plenty of people who have multiple children and multiple different things, and they're running everywhere. So
I just had lunch with a guy today, and he was saying, does your wife know what her life is going to be like when our 2 youngest, Riker and Lincoln, are both playing baseball at the same time?
If that happens, I do not know what it's going to be like, but I know that I know the potential.
Yeah, he said she's not going to like it very much.
I'm not. But we only have one kid in a sport in the evenings right now, so our running around is not as crazy as some people's, but we do have a somewhat crazy schedule right now. So we just work out. I mean, I'm looking at, in the beginning of the week, I'm looking at what's going on in the evenings the whole week and when we can eat and make it work. So some nights we're eating at 4:45 or 5, and some nights we're eating at 7:30.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we're eating together at the ball field right before a game starts or practice starts or whatever. Or I don't know. Or eating in the car when you're going somewhere, but you're just eating together. Right. So be willing to eat at unconventional times and unconventional places.
It's huge.
Just so that you can have that touch point as a family together, even if it's just 15 minutes. Yeah,
I think it makes a big deal to your kids that it's the community that is what brings us together, not the food.
Right.
Right? Like, there's still food at these times in unconventional times or places, but it's like, no, even if we're not having like a big, even if it's PBJs before a baseball practice, we're sitting down together for a chance to connect.
Yep. Okay, start young with picky eaters. So we have one Jackson, thankfully, is not a picky eater. He used to be, but he's really great at eating almost anything. And then all the rest of our kids are picky eaters, and hopefully they grow out of that as Jackson did. But our rule for our own sanity is you get what you're served. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it, but then you're just going to be hungry.
Right.
And none of our kids have starved themselves to death.
Right.
Yet. So they will go to bed hungry sometimes because they really hated dinner, and we just say like, "Oh, there's breakfast in the morning."
Right.
So that's our rule. That's how we run our families. Some people don't want to do that, and that's great. But have your rules that you stick with. Maybe it's if you don't like dinner, you get yourself a bowl of cereal, or you make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Whatever your rule is, just don't feel like you have to be a short order cook where, well, I'm going to make 5 different meals because nobody likes the same thing.
Right.
I would say
don't do that.
Don't do that. That is going to wear you out and be way more hassle than it's worth. So
yeah, I agree.
Pick your rule for whatever makes the most sense for your family and keeps your sanity, and go with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Have a plan for some of your meals. So, as far as what you're going to talk about.
So now you're transitioning a little bit to dinner time conversation.
Yes, okay. Dinner conversation. If that can be a struggle for you guys, like if it just seems like our whole family just doesn't know what to talk about, or we just get into arguments or whatever, maybe you say, hey, tonight we're going to pick a question that we're all going to answer.
Yeah.
And you can pick a question maybe from this. We've talked about this on our live.
Yeah, so if you've joined us for Marriage by Design Live, you've seen us go out of this book before, 3,000 Questions About Me. It's super simple. It's just numbers 1 to 3,000 and one-line questions that you can talk about. Things like, what's the most beautiful city in the world? What's your favorite idiom? If you were going on Shark Tank to pitch an idea, whom would you want to work with? Those types of things. Some of them are serious, some of them are silly, but definitely are good icebreaker questions if it's difficult to kind of get the conversation flowing around the dinner table.
Right. Yep. So maybe some nights you need to say, hey, tonight we're talking about this, or we're going to pick a question, or I want to hear from every different person about high-low buffalo. So there's this thing that you can do that's high-low. I think my brother is the one that does the buffalo thing, calls it buffalo. But high is like the best moment of your day. Low is like the worst moment of your day. And buffalo is like something funny that happened. And maybe you're like, tonight I just want to go around and talk about our high-low buffalo. And kind of go from there.
Okay.
Right?
It's good. Yeah, you hit on something that I do think is important, and that's setting the foundation that we're going to go around and each person around this table is going to get the spotlight. Mm-hmm. That means while Jackson's talking, Ryan and Riker aren't having a side conversation over here. While Riker's talking, you and I aren't like making eyes at each other across the table like you always are trying to do it at the table. We're listening to Riker, Ryan, or Jackson, whoever's speaking. Sure. It helps. I mean, for one, that doesn't have anything to do with dinner. That's a life skill that people need to learn. Of every time somebody talks, I'm not trying to tell them about why my story is better than theirs or whatever. I'm just listening to them share.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of having dinner around the dinner table is that it's about more than just eating. Right. You're creating a family atmosphere. You're growing together as a family, and you're hopefully teaching great life skills like listening and speaking and how to dialogue, as well as manners. Right. Let's teach some manners. Please and thank you. Hopefully you're teaching that more than just at the dinner table. How to properly eat a meal. Right. Etiquette.
How to listen.
Yes.
How to pass the conversation ball back and forth. We've talked about that. Dialogue versus communication. I mean, a lot of these skills that we talk about on Marriage Monday, right, when we talk about marriages and things that can trip people up in marriage, a lot of those skills can be taught to our kids around the dinner table. Yeah. As opposed to trying to teach them about these things when they're off playing with their friends, or they're running over here and playing with the ball, or playing with toys or whatever. You have undivided attention at the dinner table. Yeah. It's important.
Right. Okay, and then let's see. Oh, for getting the meal on the table, use meal kit services if that if you need to.
Like McDonald's and Hardee's?
Like HelloFresh.
Oh.
You know, if it's easier for you to do that for a season or forever or whatever, use those kind of meal kit services.
If you have the means to do it, do it.
Those are great. Yeah,
totally.
Another idea on how to troubleshoot the time issue, like I just don't have time to make a meal. When you do cook, make double so that you can freeze that double portion and use that as at a time where it's really, you're crunched for time.
Right.
And then you can just pull it out of the freezer and thaw it during the day and throw it in the oven.
Sure.
Or whatever that looks like.
Sure. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Life hack.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I need to get back into is doing that.
Yeah, my suggestion to that would be take the half out and freeze it before you serve the other half. Mm-hmm. Because your second half can tend to disappear if you don't, which wrecks your double planning. It makes your groceries more expensive. And that whole thing we talked about first about how kids and husbands are less overweight when you eat meals at home, that also goes right out the window.
You know, part of having dinners at home that you cook, the great thing about that too is you can control how much you're cooking. And so maybe you're using leftovers to help with feeding lunches.
Right.
Or with keeping the grocery bill down or whatever that is.
Right.
It does both of those things. So maybe you're making a double or a triple portion. Maybe you're freezing one part of it and you're taking another part of it and eating it that night for dinner, of course. And then the third part you're having as leftovers for lunch that week. So, of course, you can make it work the way it works for you. But that's kind of one of the nice things about having dinners at home a lot and making your own dinners is that you can make enough that you can use later or have leftovers, whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I'll give you one of the conversations. You also get to have really funny conversations at your dinner table. So yeah, just as a little ending, if you've lasted this long, a little funny story.
This is not from our table necessarily, but someone we know.
Someone we know, us. We were having dinner.
I'm trying to change names to protect the innocent.
Around the dinner table. I'm sure this will embarrass them at some point. But
so our friends have a daughter named Shmayan.
It's us, and we have a daughter named Ryan.
Oh.
And she's 6. And a couple months ago, I was at the grocery store. I was buying pads and tampons, and Ryan's like, "What are these?" So I had to explain to her what that's used for, right? Right in the middle of the grocery store. Right in the middle of the grocery store, and
Ryan's not exactly a quiet individual.
No.
So I'm sure she had plenty to say about that everyone overheard.
And whatever. To me, I'm like,
yeah, it's part of life.
It's life.
Right. It's fine.
Doesn't bother me.
Right.
I'm just kind of laughing internally because I'm sure the people walking by are very uncomfortable by my conversation. Okay, so then it's been like a month or 2 since we had that conversation, and nothing's really been said about it since then, right? So we're at the dinner table last week, and Ryan, out of nowhere, just says, "Oh, Mom, tell Jackson about how you bleed out of your vagina."
Oh, Ryan.
And I was like, and Jackson goes, "Oh, yeah, her period? I already know about that."
And then we moved on.
And then that was
it. That was the whole conversation.
So sometimes when you have dinner together, you get these funny moments that you'll remember forever.
Right.
Of the inappropriate conversations that your daughter wants to have.
Right.
So, anyway, we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the importance of family dinner. Right. How you can make that work when life is crazy. Yep. And remembering that the enemy is really intent on tearing down families. And he does that a lot of times by tearing down marriages, but he also does that a lot of times by just keeping us busy.
Yeah, you're right.
Don't fall into the trap of we're just too busy to have meals together as a family.
Yeah.
Find a way to have meals together as a family. Maybe you're taking those family dinners and making them family breakfast. Before everybody leaves the house, you take 20 minutes because it's too hard to do dinner because we're going everywhere. Let's change and have family breakfast for a while.
That's good.
Whatever that looks like, get around the dinner table consistently for meals and I think you'll find that it's well worth it. But the research shows that it's worth it too. But don't allow the enemy to kill, steal, and destroy from your family because you just are too busy to take the time to be together.
Yeah, it's awesome, babe. It's great. Hey, thanks guys so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here for Family Friday. Have an excellent Friday. Go into the weekend. Have a strong weekend. End your weekend out by joining us on Marriage by Design Live on Sunday night at 8:30. And then we'll be back at you next week with a new Marriage Monday, followed up by a new Family Friday.
Yep.
Until then, guys, thanks so much for joining us. And remember, God is for your family. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.